If you've ever felt the magic of stepping into a rich, expansive RPG world, you've probably crossed paths with BioWare. But as we all know, not all fairy tales have happy endings. Today, we're diving deep into BioWare's downfall and how Larian Studios with Baldurs Gate 3 eventually capitalized on the mistakes that BioWare made after being acquired by EA. BioWare was founded in 1995 in Edmonton, Canada. Their first major success was Baldurs Gate in 1998. Followed by Baldurs Gate 2 in the year of 2000. These games sold millions and set the stage for what RPGs could be. They were groundbreaking for their time, offering a deep narrative and complex characters. What set Baldurs Gate apart was its use of the Infinity Engine, which allowed for an isometric view and real-time gameplay with the option to pause. This was revolutionary for RPGs at the time, and set the standard for many games to come. The games also featured a morality system where your choices affected the game's outcome, a hallmark of future BioWare titles. BioWare's golden age arguably started with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic in 2003. Knights of the Old Republic offered a twist that left players speechless, setting a new bar for storytelling. Then came the Mass Effect series, with the first title in 2007. Mass Effect introduced the dialogue wheel, allowing for nuanced conversations and complex moral choices. The sequel, Mass Effect 2, refined this further and is often considered one of the greatest games ever made. It sold over 4 to 5 million copies and has a Metacritic score of 96. In 2009, BioWare then launched another successful franchise with Dragon Age Origins. The game brought back the high fantasy setting with a vengeance. Its complex characters like Morrigan and Alistair, combined with lots of branching storylines, offered a staggering amount of replay value. But it wasn't all smooth sailing from here. Mass Effect 3 faced backlash for its ending, sparking debates about artistic integrity versus fan expectations. The game also introduced a galactic readiness meter, which many felt was a way to push multiplayer and microtransactions. In hindsight, it clearly was a sign of things to come. BioWare had been acquired by Electronic Arts in 2007. Initially, this seemed like a match made in heaven. EA had the resources and BioWare had the creativity. And with Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 2, we still saw major BioWare successes after the acquisition. But these games had likely been in development for quite a while already. And as we've seen in many big fish eat small fish stories, the smaller fish often loses its identity eventually. The first sign of trouble was a shift towards more action-oriented gameplay in Dragon Age 2. The game was criticized for its simplified combat and repetitive environments. It felt like BioWare was trying to cater to a broader audience at the expense of its core fanbase, and it's not unrealistic to think that EA played a big role here. What followed were games that clearly had lost touch with the core of what made BioWare successful in the first place. Mass Effect Andromeda was a highly anticipated title that aimed to breathe new life into the franchise by taking players to a whole new galaxy. However, the game was plagued with issues right from its launch. The facial animation glitches became infamous, turning emotional cutscenes into unintentional comedy. But the problems ran deeper than just technical issues. The story itself felt lackluster and disconnected from the rich lore that the original trilogy had built. Characters were less compelling, and the narrative failed to capture the same sense of urgency and consequence that fans had come to expect from a Mass Effect game. The game's open world exploration, while ambitious, often felt empty and devoid of meaningful content. All these issues combined gave the impression of a game that was rushed out the door, lacking the polish and depth that had made BioWare a household name in the RPG genre. Next we have Anthem, a game that was supposed to be BioWare's answer to Destiny. It was a commercial disaster and overall failure. Despite amazing core gameplay, the game seemed to suffer from an identity crisis. It tried to be a looter shooter, but lacked the engaging loot and compelling story to keep players invested. It was another game that could have been great, but was shipped in a disappointing quality. Developers who had worked on the game later said it had been pushed out within just 15 months. This clearly doesn't sound like the old BioWare anymore. In 2014, we then got Dragon Age Inquisition, hoping to find sparks of what made BioWare great in the past, but the game ultimately fell short of expectations as well. Despite winning numerous Game of the Year awards, many fans and critics alike consider it a failure in terms of living up to the BioWare legacy. The game suffered from an open world design that felt empty and lacked the depth and complexity that made earlier titles in this series so engaging. Side quests often felt like filler, lacking the narrative richness that BioWare was known for. Yes, the game did sell well, but it was a divisive title that signaled BioWare's further departure from its roots. Enter Larian Studios. After successfully releasing Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 proving that these types of games still had an audience, the company managed to get the rights for the development of Baldur's Gate 3. The game entered early access in 2020 and sold over 1 million copies before its release in August of this year. With 3 years of development alongside the community, Larian showcased how to be successful by focusing on the very core audience that BioWare had abandoned. It's like someone found an old treasured recipe and decided to bring it back to life, but with modern cooking techniques. Baldur's Gate 3 is already a major success within just a couple of months of release. It's breaking Steam records and bringing an entirely new audience to the RPG genre. BG3 is especially praised for its complex narrative, deep character customization, and player agency. Everything that old-school BioWare was known for. It also uses the D&D 5th edition rule set, offering a level of complexity and strategy that has been missing from recent RPGs. If you look at the official website, you find clear mentions in the FAQ that the game is released as a full product. No microtransactions, DLCs, or other shenanigans anywhere. 25 years after BioWare emerged and became the most successful RPG developer in the world, Larian Studios is breaking records with a formula that BioWare abandoned. And on top of that, with Baldur's Gate as an IP that once was synonymous with BioWare itself, until it wasn't anymore. So what went wrong with BioWare? They had the recipe for success, but decided to change the ingredients. They moved away from complex narratives and decision-making to focus on live service models and microtransactions. BioWare's shift can clearly be traced back to the influence of EA and the broader industry trend towards games as a service. This model prioritizes ongoing revenue streams over a complete finished product. The result of that? Games that feel unpolished and are riddled with microtransactions. But while some of these games might do well financially, they certainly aren't loved by gamers. On the other hand, Baldur's Gate 3 shows that the original recipe still works. The game is complex, challenging, and offers multiple paths, just like the original Baldur's Gate games that made BioWare famous. Without a push for DLCs or microtransactions, Larian Studios is already counting money beyond their wildest dreams. All with an IP and a game formula that BioWare never should have abandoned in the first place. One can only hope that the major success of Baldur's Gate 3 is going to have major influence on the final release of Dragon Age Dreadwolf. The fourth installment of the Dragon Age series might very well be BioWare's last shot at redemption. And if they didn't learn from their failures by now, they probably never will. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you in the next one.